Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review. This show was recorded on September 2, 2023. I'm Asbed Bedrossian, and I'm here with Hovik Manucharyan. Here are the major topics we'll touch on today. We'll look at how the election in Yerevan is shaping up and how the campaigns are going. Then we'll talk about some of the developments in Artsakh, where the president tendered his resignation to parliament yesterday. And finally, we'll brush upon the latest in the negotiations and geopolitical situation around Artsakh and Armenia. To talk about these issues, we have with us Dr. Khachikyan, an international relations expert from Stanford University, specializing in intervention. He currently teaches at the Russian Armenian University in Yerevan. Hello, Arthur. How are you today?
Just as everybody else.
Hi, Arthur.
Hi, good to talk to you guys.
So on our podcast in May, we covered the founding of a new movement called Mayoral, Mother Armenia, spearheaded by Andranik Tevanyan. Many well-known and respected names backed the movement, including yourself. Can you tell us why you decided to support that movement and what the current state is?
Well, first of all, I think any movement that aims at removing this regime, changing this regime, removing this group from power is worthy of support. I was part of a group led by Stepan Danelyan, the so-called conceptual platform. And Stepan kind of introduced us to Andranik, and we stood behind him. I supported them then. I still support them now. Because of various circumstances, I can't physically be there, and I'm not part of that inner group anymore, but I do support them, as well as any other oppositional group that has a real plan, a real agenda to take us out of this disastrous tailspin that Armenia is in.
So finally, the parliamentary opposition decided to support Andranik Tevanyan's run for mayor. Tevanyan left the Hayastan Dashing and formed his own party, as we said, Mayor Hayastan. And that was for the purpose of running in the elections, because neither Hayastan Dashing nor Badivunem had decided to run or support any candidates at the time. What are your thoughts? How is Tevanyan doing right now?
Well, some of the numbers I've seen in the mayoral, prior to the elections of the mayor, the representative of this gang has 15%. Of course, they will use any resources available to them to add another 20 or 30 on top. Then the second candidate was 9%. That was a former mayor, Hike, and Andranik has about 3%.
What is Tevanyan's campaign strategy then?
Well, again, I was away from that group for a long time. From what I saw, they were trying to convince people that surrendering Karabakh, surrendering Artsakh is not going to enhance our security. On the contrary, the next target will be Armenia. They were very active in the community, they were very active in Yerevan. They think that what was happening with Armenia in the last few years was travesty. It was basically treason, and they want this decision reversed. Our so-called leader's decision to recognize Artsakh as part of Azerbaijan, they want this decision reversed, and they want them removed from power, and I completely support them.
Well, so Tevanyan has said that a win in Yerevan is going to set the stage for removing the current government from power. You mentioned this a little earlier also. But polls indicate that for most people, these elections are actually about their day-to-day municipal concerns, like garbage collection, transportation issues, water, metro, elevators. Shouldn't Tevanyan be out there trying to convince voters that he's the most qualified candidate concerned with their issues and committed to finding their solutions? I mean, in a sense, Arthur, I am concerned that by making this municipal campaign about removing the ruling party, then if the ruling party wins, Pashinyan will be able to boast that by the opposition's own admission, his policies of handing Artsakh to Azerbaijan have been effectively validated by this referendum.
Right. I do see that danger. I think that they have a two-pronged approach. On the one hand, they're talking about Artsakh and security and treason and the way in which Armenia is going to be destroyed by Turkey and Azerbaijan if we continue down this path. On the other hand, they are talking about some municipal issues. Recently, they proposed to help the taxi drivers by giving them some kind of I think some privileges, some financial privileges. They also talked about, I was with Andranik when we were talking about this epidemic of drugs that is destroying Armenia's youth, and it is a very serious epidemic. So they are tackling some issues related to Yerevan and just like everyday lives of Armenians, but they're also talking about long-term security goals. I think both are quite legitimate.
Asbed, the other side of the argument is that even if the opposition doesn't do anything, then Pashinyan will claim this is the referendum on his foreign policy. So to me, it sounds like be damned if you do or be damned if you don't approach.
Yes.
And many, I think, in the opposition-minded Armenians, or can I say that Armenians who do not support treason, don't have it in their hearts to vote for things like trash collection and sewer conditions. So maybe this will be another way to draw in undecided voters, people who find a reason to go to the elections. By the way, according to that same poll where Andranik Tevanyan was shown to be number 3 with 3.8%, about 40% of the voters said that they cannot make up their mind yet. So they're still sort of on the fence, and it would be interesting to see if this number decreases drastically, in the next week, which would mean probably in favor of the opposition.
I wonder if that might happen. I think the regime is going to use any and all resources available to not allow them to win, because Yerevan is half of Armenia, don't forget. So they're going to do everything in their power to prevent the opposition from winning. It's also possible that Haik might join the ruling party. They're saying that he is kind of close to Pashinyan, although you never know. But Pashinyan is going to do everything in his power to win. I can't believe I just pronounced his name. I usually don't.
Just another data from that MPG poll from last week was that 47% of the people said that they are familiar with the campaign talking points of the Tigran Avignon. So apparently, the outreach by the Avignon campaign is so strong that nearly 50% of the population says that they have somehow heard and or participated in their meetings and so forth, which is another indicator of how important civil contract sees this election that is investing millions of dollars. So pretty well-funded campaign, and with sometimes with obvious signs of use of administrative resources, and seeing Andranik Tevanyan number 3 is still sort of reassuring. So because there are other qualified candidates such as Manet Handilyan, who is also backed by Ruben Vartanyan, so a well-funded source, a few other well-funded candidates, but apparently, according to MPG, Andranik Tevanyan is number 3. Although I don't know what number 3 in a minority government, just like sort of the Armenian opposition in Armenian parliament today, would mean if there's some kind of a coalition that allows a civil contract majority in the Council of Elders.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they will have the majority anyway. I think they will forge these elections anyway. Everyone is saying that their candidate will win anyway. And you can see that as he is, talking to Yerevan residents, a couple of them told them, you're talking about kindergartens and asphalt, and our compatriots are dying of hunger. How can you talk about these things? So some people do have consciousness and they do speak up. Some do not. Sometimes they still greet them as saviors, which is really, really puzzling. I really wonder what's happening with our people. They still call them our saviors. They still kiss their hands. It's unbelievable. And a few days ago, when I was still in Yerevan, there was a concert. There were people dancing in the streets, like thousands of them, dancing and celebrating. We have a real threat that tomorrow Azeri forces might invade Artsakh and start killing Armenians. We'll see part 3 of the Armenian genocide. It may start in a couple of days. And Armenia is now destroying its relationship with Russia even more to make sure that Russia just withdraws its troops and abandons them to their fate. And people are dancing in the streets of Yerevan. And when they asked this candidate, what do you think about the future of Artsakh? He said, "Don't ask me about that. Ask me about municipal problems like kindergartens and asphalt." That's what he told them. So this is really you have the impression that they live in an alternative reality. I don't understand this.
Sometimes, I mean, there's legitimate points to criticize even their policy about the goddamn asphalt, like the fact that they keep wasting money on it by doing very shoddy jobs, and they have to re-asphalt the streets. But it seems like anytime you go into that dimension, then you're on their turf, and you're not talking about Artsakh, which is not what we want to do. So let's talk about Artsakh, Arthur. First of all, let's wish everyone a happy Artsakh Independence Day today, September 2, 2023. Right. This is the 32nd anniversary. There have been a lot of developments and internal issues in and around Artsakh in the past week, so we'd be remiss if we didn't try to touch at least some of them. Most obviously, Artsakh Khachikyan, the president of Artsakh, submitted his resignation. That was on Friday. And as one of his last acts before he did that, he dismissed State Minister Groong and replaced him with Samvel Shahramanyan, who had been the chair of the Artsakh Security Council before. This resignation has been a long time in coming, as the rumors were all over the place for most of 2023. Most recently, Ruben Vartanyan, if you remember, put out a video accusing Khachikyan of being an outright liar and reneging on his promises to resign. So my question to you, we talked a little bit about this with Gevi Skajan as well yesterday, but I still sort of have that disbelief that this is really happening, because Artsakh has been so determined to hold on to his power. But according to Artsakh law, the parliament has 3 days to accept or ratify this resignation. Is there a possibility for surprise, since Artsakh Khachikyan's party controls a significant number of votes in the Artsakh National Assembly? Like maybe they will sort of refuse to, ratify his resignation. I don't know on what grounds or how, but I just wanted to see your thoughts, or if you have any more information than what we presented so far.
My guess is that he's gone. He's going to disappear, and he better try to find a way to disappear, because Azeris are going to prosecute him and humiliate him and torture him. So he probably will now think of ways in which he can either make a deal with them or run away. I think he is gone. I know nothing about the internal political dealings of this region. My understanding is that he was more pro-West and pro this group that seized power in Armenia 5 years ago. My understanding is that there are some other people who are saying that we should, we should find a common language, way to talk to Baku, to the Azeris, and start talking to them. In my opinion, these negotiations will be basically surrender negotiations. How will we surrender, and will anybody be spared? How many people will, be arrested? How many people will be allowed to flee? This will be surrender, negotiating the surrender of Artsakh. The Azeris are now accumulating their forces along the border. There are reports that there are Azeris now gathering near Askeran. Some people calling with urgent messages saying, "Come here, help us out." They're gathering outside our city. So the clock is ticking, and very, very soon we may face some dire consequences that will remind us of what happened 100 years ago. What astonishes me is that the population of Armenia is still largely passive. They're not taking to the streets. They continue to tolerate this group. Some of them still think of them as their saviors, and they talk about municipal problems. And that there's dancing, literally dancing in the streets of Yerevan. And 2 days ago, there were fireworks in another place, and there was a concert, and they're inviting Snoop Dogg to come to Armenia. This is some kind of an absurdist Italian or French movie. This doesn't happen. It shouldn't be happening when a nation is faced with genocide. And well, it's bad enough that we have 120,000 people who will go first. They're not going to stop. They made it very clear. The next strike will be Sunik. And after Sunik, Armenia will become undefendable. Nobody can defend it. Iran can defend it, Russia can defend it. So we will just be allowed to dissolve ourselves into Turkey. Why are people not understanding it, and why are they still at home? I will never know.
Arthur, who was interested in this change of leadership in Artsakh, and who was opposed to it?
I know very little about the internal political process in Artsakh. Maybe Hovik will be able to answer this better. I know very little, but Arayik has been widely associated with the so-called leader in Yerevan. Mm-hmm. And he, everybody was saying that he is his close associate, even though even he, I think, spoke up when this guy recognized Artsakh as part of Azerbaijan. Even he spoke up. But he's seen as his associate, and he's seen as a symbol of the defeat 3 years ago.
Arthur,
yeah,
I know it's difficult, and I mean, rational minds see few roads out of this mess that we're in. But you talked about negotiating surrender, but David Ishkhanyan is a member of the ARF, and he carries a lot of weight. And Samvel Shahramanyan and all the sort of potential leaders behind them, Bako Sahakian, and so forth, all seem to be patriots and who fought their whole lives to defend Artsakh. And maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm a dreamer, but part of me says that it won't be so easy to surrender Artsakh. But if that is the case, what strategy does Artsakh alone have in countering what's going on? What would Shahramanyan and David Ishkhanyan and so forth, and all the let's say national forces in Artsakh, the positive forces in Artsakh, be able to do now with all that's going on around them?
Again, I know very little about these people, but what I see, well, let's start with what we know. We know that the Azeris have a very significant superiority in terms of their military potential, and the people of Artsakh would not be able to win a war against Azerbaijan. They're armed to their teeth with Turkish, Russian, Israeli weapons. They're funded by the Azeri oil and by the Turkish support. So they're very armed to their teeth, really. The resistance in Artsakh would probably just be kind of a fight of honor, and they will probably hang on for as long as they can. But in the end, I don't think they'll be able to win, after which they will open the corridor, the Lachin corridor, and allow probably women and children to flee. And probably they will screen all the men and see who has participated in the war and who will be arrested and who will be tortured, etc. So this is not good. This is not good. How can they resist diplomacy? And to help, quote unquote, our diplomatic geniuses, they are now starting again the process of ratifying the Rome Statute, which would give them the right to arrest Putin. And this is seen as a stark anti-Russian move, and Russia warned them again that this will have consequences. Yeah. So they seem to be hell-bent on destroying whatever is left of their relationship with Russia, which might lead to the withdrawal of the Russian forces, after which the Azeri task will be even easier. They will crush Karabakh in a few days.
Arthur, as an aside, what is the potential or the benefit of ratifying the Rome Statute at a time when, let me just mention, the United States, Russia, China, India, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Iran, all the countries that are involved with us have not ratified this thing. Azerbaijan and Turkey are not even signatories to this statute.
These names mean nothing. Even the decision of some kind of an international court about Karabakh and the blockade didn't change anything. The Azerbaijan openly disregarded that decision. I don't know what benefit would we have from recognizing the statute and creating a new point of conflict with Russia other than just hurting ourselves and making it easier for the Turks to convince Russians that they should just withdraw and let Karabakh be swallowed up. This leadership is not rational. It's not competent. That's the mild way of saying it. They obviously have this pro-Western obsession, and they're hell-bent on destroying our relationship with Russia and forcing Russia to leave. This could be just a lack of competence, or this could be their mission. And if it's their mission, then they certainly have accomplished a lot. We're about to see our compatriots being butchered and destroyed, and Russia will withdraw from the Caucasus, and then the rest of Armenia will be gobbled up very quickly. So if that's their program, they certainly have succeeded at it. The situation is very dire. I receive calls from Karabakh, from some of my contacts, saying it's getting really, really dangerous, and Azerbaijan is accumulating forces along the border. And Armenians are dancing and eating in restaurants and celebrating and watching fireworks. Can you imagine, like, the population of Van when they were still fighting Turkey, of Turkish troops, this heroic resistance they put up? Can you imagine the population of Van celebrating with fireworks as Turkey was about to invade their city? This is a surreal movie. I don't know how to explain this. I don't know what happened to our people. I don't know who turned our people into this.
Yeah.
It's a crowd of consumers. If you wanted them to take to the streets, all you need to do is close down TikTok, Instagram, Netflix, and close down the pubs. That's when they spend their time. If you do that, you'll have rallies in the street. I promise you.
Arthur, this week, speaking about geopolitics, let's talk a little bit about that. This week, Azerbaijan resorted to another deadly escalation on the border with Armenia, resulting in the deaths of 3 Armenian servicemen and at least 2 injuries, one of them critical. This just goes to highlight that Aliyev and Erdogan don't seem to be content on stopping or stabilizing the situation. Of course, we know that they're both bloodthirsty criminals that hopefully will get their day in court and in front of some kind of justice. But speaking about larger geopolitical reasons, do you see this as an attempt to spark a wider battle, potentially opening the much talked about new front against Russia, or is it just basically Aliyev doing this because he can and it serves his ego?
Aliyev and Erdogan, of course, have a plan to destroy Armenia and continue building their big Ottoman Empire, now this time stretching eastward, not westward. So they do have this plan. They make no secret of it. They make no secret of the fact that they consider Armenia, whatever is left of Armenia, to be part of Azerbaijan. They don't want Armenian statehood. They want us to be like Kurds, except we're not even Kurds. We don't have 35 million people. We only have 2. So we'll very, very quickly be forced into migration, emigration, and there'll be no Armenian. So they make no secret. They do not have any intention of making peace with us. They do not behave or speak in a way that would suggest that they want peace. People who want peace make concessions, mutual concessions. They give assurances. They don't use belligerent rhetoric. The Azeri Foreign Ministry and Azeri state television channels regularly refer to Yerevan as Yerevan and part of Azerbaijan. They regularly say that Armenians should not have a state. The state was a gift from Russia and it should be taken back. So they are not in any mood to make peace with us. Let's not make any secret of it. And Hovik, I'm sorry, you had the second part of your question. I kind of forgot.
So do you think this is part of a wider narrative?
Yes.
Has something to do with the war in Ukraine, or is this a localized sort of plan?
What happens here is a direct consequence of the war in Ukraine. After the Ukrainians and the Russians, Armenians are the next biggest victim of this conflict, because this conflict gave Turkey a chance to bargain with Russia, knowing that Russia is now completely dependent on Turkey, and get some concessions at our expense. So this can continue, by the way. Putin is about to meet Erdogan in a few days. They may ask for bigger concessions in return for something more. Turkey is blackmailing Russia, knowing that Russia is very dependent on it now, on Turkey and Azerbaijan. So yes, and the West, Russia seeing this as an attempt to start a second front, to drag Russia into a war with Turkey to further weaken Russia. But basically, if there's a war between the Azeris and the Armenians don't have a chance given the state of our army, as it's reported to us. So Russia will have to fight this war on her own, and she is in no position to start a second war with Turkey in the Caucasus right now. So Turkey knows that, and that's why they're pressuring Russia for more concessions, and that's why Russia wants this situation to stay stable as possible. They don't want it to escalate. And our so-called leaders seem to be doing everything possible to antagonize Russia, provoke Russia, and start some kind of a conflict, which Armenia will lose. And then Russia will probably withdraw. So this is insanity on the part of our government. This the only way to explain this. Either they're insane and incompetent, or they have a mission. They have a mission from certain countries to surrender Armenia and to force Russia out of the region.
Well, if they are incompetent, then it doesn't show in any other areas, such as the amount of asphalt they're laying, which is or the big names they're bringing to Armenia. So yes, it does make me wonder which one of those it is.
Yeah,
but
right.
So following the border fighting, I mean, this is one of the most significant, let's say, it would be probably in the top 5 of border incidents since the end of the war. And the day after the fighting in Sot, Charles Michel made a statement. Was it to condemn Azerbaijan for instigating one of the deadliest instances of fighting? Nope. Was it to present the reports about the incident from the EU monitoring mission, who's ostensibly monitoring Armenia's borders for this kind of activity? Nope. Was it to even express some deep concern about human lives being destroyed by dictators the EU is doing business with? Nope. And Charles Michel instead talked about the deteriorating situation in Artsakh and the need to make, quote, courageous compromises in light of the escalation on the border. I'm sorry, but to me, that sounds like, if you don't want to see more of this, then make compromises. And we don't know who those compromises, are being asked from. But I know this is your pet peeve, Arthur.
Right.
What do Armenians want from Europe? What are they doing on our borders? And how would you analyze Michel's statement in overall?
What Armenians should do is they should examine their brains, because this is exactly what happened to them 100 years ago, 150 years ago, when they kept asking Europe to help and kept hoping that Europe would help. And Europe helped once in a while, but then most of the time just dropped them and let Turkey swallow them. What we should do is we should examine our brains and why, the reasons why we're so naive and why we learn nothing from history. We're a little bit, I don't know much about them, but it seems like we're a little bit like the Maronites in Lebanon. We have this imagined connection to the West, and we keep hoping that the West was going to come and help us. The West doesn't come and help us in a military strategic sense, and they keep sacrificing us. They keep doing this. And so do other states. Russia does it once in a while when it's in her interest to do so. So instead of being realistic, we have this debate. Who has been treating us worse? Has it been Europe, or has it been in Russia? And anytime you have any debate, which I refuse to participate in, by the way, on Armenian television, this discussion. We're like an abused wife who is kind of remembering her former husbands and trying to decide who beat her less. It's horrible. Yes, Europe has completely reneged on all her promises. This mission of Euro observers, as I warned, was completely useless. They do nothing to protect us. We refused Russia's observers. We refused CSTO observers to choose European observers who do absolutely nothing. And they make no secret of the fact they can't do anything for us. We have this nauseating statement by Jean Michel, again underlying the fact that it's Europe's foreign policy is completely hypocritical and cynical, and they're abandoning an entire ethnic group to be massacred, and they have nothing to say other than just general empty diplomatic statements. And this is no surprise, because as you remember, Ms. Bunderlein, when she went to Baku, she was kissing Aliyev's hands and saying that he's their reliable partner and friend. So it should come as no surprise. And then we blame Russia, that Russia is doing the same. At least Russia doesn't, portray herself as in this international kind of bastion of democracy and human rights, and then says things like this. At least it's less hypocritical and cynical. Yes, Russia has her interests, and unfortunately for us, her interests in a way now are beginning to overlap with Turkey. But what Europe is doing is it just makes me nauseous. They basically 5 years ago, when we took to the streets and we did this Velvet Revolution, which yours truly participated in, I was very stupid. They had me for 3 days. When we took to the streets, it was in the hopes of joining the quote unquote civilized European community, the West, the freedom-loving, democracy-loving, human rights-loving West, and rejecting the autocracies such as Russia and Iran. And look where it got us. It turns out it meant nothing for Europe. Democratic or not, it means nothing for them. They have closer relationship with Aliyev, a dictator. They have a closer relationship with a dictator than with a democracy. So all this hypocrisy, all these lies, once again, Armenians fell for them. Again, we learn nothing. We keep falling for the same, these lies, these fairy tales, European fairy tales about Santa Claus, who's going to come from Europe and give us gifts. We're like children. I just don't understand what we should examine our brains. As for this statement, like you said it, Hovik, yes, it's very cynical, very hypocritical. All these promises were for nothing. We are being attacked. Europe does nothing. Russia does nothing. Let's congratulate ourselves. As usual in our history, we did great in terms of our statehood, in terms of our diplomacy, in terms of our public discourse. This is just great. Loving it.
Arthur, going back to Artsakh, specifically about opening the Aghdam road and then 24 hours later opening the Lachin corridor, this is something that I think now the EU is starting to talk about. Obviously, they're all singing Azerbaijan's tune. What do you think about this offer?
Well, for them to start, supplying Artsakh from the Azeri side through the Azeri channels is certainly going to be the first step towards, quote, reintegrating Karabakh. So they're going to try to make Karabakh dependent on these supplies, and they're going to try to establish control, probably try to introduce some kind of special forces or militia, or try to maybe try to move the population in. They'll try to probably bring Azeris and resettle them in Karabakh, or say that, okay, well, now you're a region, you're part of our territory. Here's your mayor of, by the way, not Stepanakert, they call this Khankendi. So this is going to be your mayor of Khankendi, and he's going to distribute the help that you're getting. They are choking us. They're like a bulldog that grabbed another dog by the throat. They're choking and killing us. And obviously, opening this corridor may help in the short term, but in the long term, it will be used to totally destroy Artsakh and force them out.
Well, given the history of Aliyev never coming through with any promises, I don't see that the Lachin corridor would be open 24 hours, 48 hours, or a month later. I think basically it would be the Aghdam road opening, and then that's it. The rest of the agreement would be dust.
Yes. And you know how genius our negotiators are. We have basically conceded everything. We gave up everything, and we gave nothing. We get nothing in response, not even our POWs. Our POWs were not returned to us. The security of Karabakh was not guaranteed. Nothing. We got nothing. We got the prospect of further humiliation and further defeat, because we have no diplomacy, we have no government, and we have no friends now in the West or in Russia. In Russia, you have the pro-Turkish camp and the anti-Turkish camp. We do nothing to play this card. We do nothing to network and try to have some presence in this game. Baku has much, much stronger influence in Moscow than we do. And the same is true for the West, for Europe and Washington. They're extremely strong. And if that was not enough, they also managed to cut ties between the diaspora and Armenia, alienated diaspora, and split the diaspora, because now they're pro-KP forces in the diaspora also. So this is a total attack on anything that is Armenian, on our people and on our statehood.
All right. Let's wrap up our topics here. I'd like to ask each of you if there's been something on your mind this past week that you want to talk about. Hovik, anything on your mind?
After the fighting, some Armenian propagandists, I'm going to name names, Asbed Bedrossian, who is a deputy editor-in-chief of Armen Press, the government-funded news agency, started circulating this one image of a drone dropping a grenade or some kind of a bomb on some Azeris. The next day, of course, we saw images of Armenian UAV control centers being destroyed. But so they showed just one image of a UAV dropping a bomb, and they claimed that it was a defeat of Azerbaijan. This is the same sort of Haktelu spirit that we saw from the 2020 war. The reason I mentioned this is there's a lot of debate whether technology was the determining factor. And I posit that it wasn't the sole determining factor. Obviously, if we had drones, it'd be better. But if you have bought that, the reason we lost the war is because Armenia didn't have enough weapons, enough drones, and so forth. And if only we had more, then we would win the war. So only for those people who have drunk that Kool-Aid, I would like to calculate how much that drone costs. I'm estimating that a drone costs maximum, let's say, I don't know, $100,000, right? So
it's in that order.
So in that battle, where we dropped the defeating bomb towards 2 Azeri soldiers, we dropped 0.2 Snoop Dogg concerts. Okay,
right.
So now imagine if we didn't spend all that money on Snoop Dogg concerts and bought the actual fucking drones and more advanced drones, what could we do? That's all I want to leave.
Or air defense systems. Systems. Let me tell you, what's happening right now is kind of proving, sadly, the point that our enemy is making, is that Armenians are not worthy of statehood. I'm so sorry to say this, but we need to hear it. Our people are not behaving in a way that would indicate that we value our statehood. We have proven that we value money, food, pubs, drugs, trade, expensive cars that we can show off to people. That we have proven that. But we don't seem to appreciate the fact that by miracle, a sheer miracle, we got statehood. Right next door to us, we have 35 million Kurds who have been fighting to have a state for, I think, about 40 years, if not more. And they can't have it. And we were handed statehood from Russia twice by accident. And we don't behave like a people that, like a group, an ethnic group that wants to have a statehood or is capable of having statehood. Because you do not have, if 120,000 Israelis were surrounded for 7 months starving, you would not have dancing in the streets of Tel Aviv. You would not have fireworks in the streets of Tel Aviv. You wouldn't have people eating and drinking while 120,000 of our compatriots are, their children are starving to death. And when we're looking at, very possibly in a couple of days, you may have another attack on Artsakh. It's a very sad picture. And something was done to our people for many decades, some kind of a, either just political propaganda or just the way our thinking was influenced by this consumerist way of life where people value their money. I've talked to a lot of people in Yerevan, they're saying, well, I don't care what happens as long as I can make my money, I'm fine. I've talked to people like this. A lot of cab drivers. Oh, I don't care. Tomorrow, Turks may come for all I care. We could live under Turkey. I don't care as long as I make money. I have heard this from people. Or they would say, you know what? I'm so glad that the Russians will leave soon. All I want is for Russians. This is like literally what one cab driver told me. I just want Russians to leave as soon as possible so I can go to America. And I told him, well, if you're going to America, isn't it all the same to you? No, because we're going to go to America, we're going to make money, come back here, and then we're going to defend ourselves. Like, okay. So you have a group where, completely deprived of any kind of education, any kind of analytical thought, any kind of even common sense. It's some kind of it's like a narcotic dream. I've never seen anything like this.
Okay. All right. We're going to leave it there today then. Thank you, Arthur, for joining us.
Thanks. Dark as always, but very realistic.
And that's what I think what our listeners expect. And I would just like to add that, yes, we are dark, but we are realistic and hopefully also some kind of a shock medicine. Obviously, none of us want the demise in Armenia. I moved myself personally with my own family here. And it has been a lifelong dream. But for those that listen to our podcast, please, like this episode, share it and with your friends and help us reach more people because I think more people need to know the truth.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
All right. That's our show. We hope you found our weekend review helpful. We invite your feedback and your suggestions. You can find us on most social media and podcast platforms. The links are in our show notes. Talk to you next week.